So great, everybody. Welcome to our third in the Leadership Development Series. And we are so excited to be here. My name is Judy Feldhausen, and I am joined today by Bob Wischmeier, who is co-hosting this event. And we are so excited to be here. Isn't that right, Bob?
It is, you guys. We look forward to this for some time. So we're doing this once a month, and when it's our turn to do this, it's a lot of fun. So thanks, Judy. Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
It is. So we are going through the book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell. And in the 21-day challenge call, we've actually been discussing this book for almost 6 months. That's just almost overwhelming to me that we have been talking about one book for 6 months. But it is designed so we can discuss a chapter each week and really get into some depth that with any other book we've ever discussed has not been possible. And our 21-day challenge team has gotten to be so close and helpful with one another that this method has really helped each other become better leaders through the process. Wouldn't you agree with that, Bob?
I think it has, Judy. Every single individual that's been in our organization, in our leadership group, that's been going through this law of process, or the Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, has commented this has been the best leadership book that any of them have read. I feel the same way. It's really resonated with me. So it's really a joy to be able to share some of these things with everybody else.
It is. And so this week we're going to actually talk about the law of process. And for me, when I first learned about this law, it was several years ago, and I learned about it in my coaching journey, and actually used this law to help my clients, not only in just leadership, but in learning and the process of learning. So this has just so many different applications for learning and leadership. It's just kind of all put together in a package. And I'm the kind of person, Bob, you have the patience of a saint, and I so admire that. I'm the kind of person that wants to know what I need to do, and then do it, and then become an expert at it. I'll give it sometimes a week or so, and this is slowing this whole thing down with this entire process.
Well, I think you've got patience. You know, at first blush, when you look at the title law process, when I first looked at it, I kind of scratched my head. I wasn't sure if I understood what we were looking at, but as I started to read the chapter, it became very clear to me very quickly this law of process. It makes perfect sense to me. Kind of a line upon line, precept upon precept. You learn, you grow, you gather information, and through that process you become stronger and stronger. The trick is to continue to move forward, not regress.
That is so true, and we do have to realize that leadership develops, and John Maxwell says daily, and it is yearly and decades, and it's something that we begin as a child when we pick the the kickball teams in the playground, and that leadership to being able to lead our families and lead our teams and become leaders in our community, it does develop day in and day out. if we constantly work on it. It doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't. I think that for those of you who haven't had a chance to actually read this book or take a look at it, you'll discover right away that one of the tools that John Maxwell uses in his writing are stories. You know, stories are wonderful. And as we begin this particular chapter in the book, he talks about a little lady, Anne Schreiber, who was 101 years old when she passed away. And then he tells a little bit about her life. She didn't make very much money. She worked for the IRS. But she retired in 1943. And she was only making like $3,100 a year when she retired. And she had not been treated very well by the company. But this was a very interesting lady. She was very frugal. She lived in New York. And she didn't even take a newspaper. You know, she just lived a very simple life. But when she passed away at the age of 101, she left an endowment to the Yeshiva University in New York. She was making $3,100 a month when she passed away. $22 million she left the university when she died. $22 million. And you scratch your head and think, how did she do that? Well, she did it one day at a time. Not in a day, it didn't happen all in one day. It happened one day at a time. And it had to do with the fact that she had saved up a little bit of money. She invested that money in a very good stock that grew like crazy, and she had dividends, and she reinvested those dividends. She did that until she was 101 years old and lived a very simple lifestyle. The point being that we're in this thing for the long haul. All of us are. And that's how leadership develops, not in a day, but daily, and those daily disciplines that we're involved in. Think about your personal agendas. What is on your agenda from one day to the next? You know, what are your priorities? What are your passions, your abilities, your relationships, your attitudes, your personal disciplines, visions, influence? What do you have on your agenda from one day to the next that is going to allow you to learn and to grow within your life from one day until the next? There was a quote I wanted to share with you this morning. John Maxwell says, although it's true that some people are born with greater natural gifts than others, the ability to lead is really a collection of skills, nearly all of which can be learned and improved, but it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process. Leadership's complicated. It's got many facets. You know, and then he gives a whole list of different leadership, experience and respect and emotional strength, people skills, all those kinds of things. The point being that it develops over time.
That's so true. And Bob, what you said about, some people are born with natural leadership, and even that needs to be improved, but many people have a lot of hurdles to overcome. John Maxwell talks a little bit about Teddy Roosevelt in the book also, and how Teddy Roosevelt really was a puny and sickly child, and his parents weren't even sure he would survive. He had asthma and poor eyesight, and he was thin, and his father actually kind of challenged him and said that if you don't have the body, the mind has to go so much farther. So you have to make the body, and and he did. He developed himself. He developed his skills, his reading, and it did not happen overnight. He started, as a police commissioner, and he ended up as president of the United States. And it's because he kept learning and growing and improved himself throughout his life. And, he helped emerge the U.S. actually as a world power. So we can all improve no matter what our handicaps are, no matter what our skill set is today. We can improve each day on a regular basis, and use these steps that John has shared with us in his book, these 4 phases of leadership growth. And I'm sure both Ms. Schreiber and President Roosevelt didn't work and always improve every day.
This chapter, I've read it several times, and you're reading the chapter about or the segment about Teddy Roosevelt and the kind of things that he did with his life. I started thinking about something in my own personal life, and this whole webinar is about helping one another, and stories help things. So, do you mind if I share just a quick story?
Absolutely, please do.
Yeah, thank you. John Maxwell talks a lot about the various ministries that he was involved in, the different churches that he worked with and helped to grow, and of course the leadership that he gained along the way. Well, I had a ministry for a long time as well in Montana. I had about 9 years. I had nearly 3,000 people in my church. It was a good-sized responsibility, and I chaired a committee, a welfare committee for all of western Montana. That was from the Canadian border south. I chaired that committee along with a whole bunch of other people that were on that committee, and we were tasked with the responsibility of helping people for one thing, to become more self-reliant, but also to be aware of potential problems or catastrophes, things of that nature that we might run into living in western Montana. We could have blizzards that just shut the place down, where semis couldn't even drive down the road. We had wind problems where trees would blow across the road, but our biggest concern always were fires. I don't know how many of you were watching this last summer when the Lolo National Forest was on fire, the Bitterroot National Forest was on fire. Those fires would come right down on top of our towns, our communities. I didn't know the first thing about how to set up an incident command center or the kind of communications necessary to lead thousands of people in the event of that kind of a catastrophe. And so, because I was tasked with that responsibility, I studied. I learned. I called people all over the country. I found out some church leaders in Florida that had dealt with hurricanes, things of that nature. I called them. I took notes down. I wrote all kinds of things down and to prepare myself. And the next thing I did is I looked at that. I realized I was not capable myself of putting that all together. I needed a team. I put a team together. I had an incident command guy. I had communications people. We put ham radios in all of our churches. We put handheld radios in churches and tested them and set up call-in times for all these different churches up and down the western side of Montana so that we could practice and get ready for that. The point is that I didn't have any skill in that regard. But I was a leader. I needed to learn those things. I learned those things. And in 2000, when those fires came through the Bitterroot Valley, they were right down on our doorsteps. There were communities that had to be evacuated. I couldn't see across my pasture. The smoke was so thick in the air, but we were prepared. I met with the county, and the county people said, you guys are more prepared for this than we are. We were at the schools helping the Red Cross take care of the children and the food and all those kinds of things. And it was, again, it was one of those opportunities to learn, to grow, to study. I'm absolutely convinced that leaders are learners. That's the bottom line. Leaders are learners. It's not the event. It's a process that leads up to the event that really makes a difference. Judy, thanks.
Yeah, that is so true. And as you learn, you sometimes you're not learning linearly. The shortest distance between two spaces, two locations, they say is a straight line. That's not true in learning. We have to go through the process of learning, and sometimes we are not always improving. Recently, I spent over a week out of town And through my Fortify journey, I've started to work out and trying to build my muscle back to where it was 20 years ago or so. And so I'm in the gym all the time. Well, when I was traveling, I didn't go in the gym all the time because I was in the car for 4 days. I was with my family. I was always going, didn't have a chance to get into the gym. And so when I came back and I got into the gym, I tried to at least start where I was before I left. And guess what? That did not work. I was started to become very disenchanted and upset because I had to take a step back and start from where I was a couple weeks before I left, and then didn't take my active and was very sore the next day when I was going through my weightlifting, because that just happens not only in exercising but in just about anything we do. We go backwards sometimes, and that challenge is huge because so many people say it didn't work, I think I'll give up.
I think that muscle atrophy analogy is perfect. It just is.
And so real. I can feel it in my legs, I can feel it in my arms, I can feel it in my back. So there are 4 phases that we need to go through in leadership. And I just love this analogy here, that when it comes to leadership and learning, there are some times that we just don't know what we don't know. And what made me really hit home with this is that I asked my granddaughter the other day when I was driving her to school how we got there, let her tell me how to take the turns, and she had no idea. And she not only didn't know, she didn't know how to get there, she didn't know how to drive the car, she didn't even know that she had to know. It was just not in her wheelhouse. She's 8, and she doesn't need to know that. But I started thinking about that sometimes we don't even know what we don't know.
Well, that's exactly right. John Maxwell shares the idea when he says that a college president shared with him that only a handful of students had signed up for a leadership course that was offered by the school. And Maxwell was asking why that was. Only a few thought of themselves as leaders. If they had understood that leadership is influence, when at the course of each day most individuals usually try to influence people, their desire might have been sparked to learn more about the subject. It's unfortunate because as long as a person doesn't know what he doesn't know, he isn't going to grow. I think that's important to remember, Some people have almost an inherent ability to pick up on those kinds of things, to look about them and see that, there's more to this. There's more than what I'm seeing here. What else is going on here? People can kind of cut to the chase, but not all of us have that ability, Judy.
And, it reminds me too, Bob, of the people that we're trying to bring into the business. And we are so excited for the possibility for them. And they sit on the other side of the table, and they're that person. They don't know what they don't know. And we have to respect that when we're talking to the potential customer or the potential distributor, that they don't know what they don't know, and to actually realize that there is a process and to not step over the process. Don't make them millionaires before they know what the product is.
Yeah. When we sponsor someone, then we have the responsibility of teaching and training, and that's kind of where that comes into play. You know, if we're their sponsor, we have a responsibility to look out for them and to help them to discover these things that they don't know.
That is so true. And there's so many ways that we can learn new things, especially today with the internet, and discover. I'm using a new program now for when someone wants to meet with me. And it's a calendar program. So instead of going back and forth and saying, what time would this work, would that work, I just have people go to my calendar. 2 months ago, I hardly knew it existed. And now I'm so excited to be able to learn this process. So when someone says, well, Thursday or Friday work for you, I can say, here's my calendar. This is when I'm available. Just pick a time and I'll be there. So just the knowledge of learning and being able to see new things and that discovery process. As leaders, we always have to be looking for I want to know what I don't know.
You know, I would have thought by this point in time, you'd have a personal assistant who would be handling all that kind of frivolity for you, huh?
Well, yeah, but Bob, you weren't available, so I had to go.
I had a cold. I couldn't. Well, moving on.
Absolutely. So as we move on, are there any questions so far that we can address? Any insights that anybody has learned that you'd like to share?
This is a really cool concept, Judy. I know what I don't know. I couldn't tell you how many times something comes up and Bonnie will say to me, hey, do you know how to do that? And I'll say, not yet.
Not yet. That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
I'll get it. I just give me a minute here. I've got YouTube. I'll figure it out, you know.
That's true. That's true. That YouTube is such a big part of our learning. But when we can realize that we don't know it, that realization and that, oh my gosh, that's a possibility. Now I can move forward and learn about this because now I know that it exists. And I know that I have a long way to be able to become a master at the concept, but now at least I can learn about the concept and move forward to go through what you went through, Bob, in your ministry with caring for the community of Montana.
You know, when I think about this particular concept, one of the things that came to my mind was, you know, in Jeff Olson's The Slight Edge, he talks about so many important things: reading 10 pages of a good book each day, learning, growing. Using your car as a university, if you will. I think, Judy, you've spoken about that before. I know Dane, when Dane works out in down in his basement, he's got a little room that he's got some equipment in, and he turns on CDs. He listens to CDs on leadership and product, etc., while he's working out. He takes advantage of those opportunities to create his own university, if you will, to know more about his product and about his company.
That is so true, and that's where this next step in the process really comes in handy, because as you do that, as you learn, as you use your mobile university or your workout university, whatever that is, it really does start to show. When I think of all the lessons that Dane has shared, that he has heard from CDs and from reading and from personal experience, and it really does show that knowledge is innate when you've really worked on it. Being able to share just tidbits and letting that knowledge show, not just through words, but attitudes and self-discovery and just personal attitude, I guess, that people start trusting and looking to you for answers, because it does start to show.
It does. A major part of that, Judy, I think, is that you have a plan for your personal growth. You really need to. It's just like you were saying before, it's not really linear. That growth process, leadership, whatever it is, whatever subject you're working on, if you're not progressing, going forward, climbing that ladder a little bit, pretty much you're stepping backwards. You know, just like the muscle will atrophy if you don't use it, and it gets really sore when you begin to use it. But that's kind of the bottom line, is you've got to have some kind of plan for your personal growth. Again, it doesn't happen in a day, but John Maxwell says you have to start paying the price today. So again, getting back to what I started talking about in the beginning about an agenda, what's on your agenda from one day to the next? What have you got factored in there? What kind of notes do you have? In the 21-day challenge group, especially the first couple of years, I was an intense stickler to my 21-day challenge categories. Each individual item that I wrote down for my 21-day challenge, each category, I looked at that every single day and made sure that I was accomplishing the things that were on that list, because they helped me to move forward, to grow, and to gain new habits. But if you're not looking at that agenda, that list of personal growth items, you can forget, and you can go backwards in a hurry. I know that I have. I've slipped many, many times. I've probably taken as many steps backwards as I have forward through the process of it. But I understand it. I understand the process involved, and it's the right thing to do, especially for those of us who are looking at growing a home-based business, and for those who we sponsor, for the people that we have a responsibility for. We need to learn this process, be involved in the process, and then, of course, teach it to others.
And one of the things that the going backwards does for me is it just creates such an empathy for others that are going through it. Because now I can understand the pain. I can understand the things that come up in their lives. You know, I always say that when we're trying to move forward, life gets in the way. It's just so true. Things are happening all the time. And if it's happening to us, we can at least understand why it's happening or how it's happening with other people. And that understanding helps us become better people and helps us become better leaders.
Yeah, it does. You look at, we were involved for some time with Lynn and Drew Manning. Drew was the fit to fat to fit health guru guy. And it was really fun being able to learn from him and his wife Lynn. And they were involved for a short period of time, just kind of a launch period of time with Synergy. But that whole process that he went through, where he did not have any empathy for the people that he was a personal trainer for, when they would tell him, you know, they had a problem with the food, eating a certain food or working out or whatever it was, he just couldn't wrap his head around it, because he had never in his life been there. He'd never been overweight. He'd never struggled with any of the things that his clients did. And he had that aha moment where he said, you know, if I'm ever going to, and it was his wife who suggested it, if you're ever going to have empathy for those people, you've got to feel what they feel. So he did. He put on whatever it was, 75 pounds or some crazy thing, and had to work himself back. But now he has that measure of understanding that he didn't have before. I was joking with you guys with Judy yesterday that I've been talking for years about how I never get sick. I mean, I haven't been sick in years. I haven't missed a day of work. You know, I wax on all like I'm really something. Then I have these little nieces here. One of them coughs in my face 200 or 300 times, and I ended up with a horrible cold. I've had it for over a week now. Well, I was telling Judy, now I've got some empathy for everybody that's been suffering from a bad cold for the last 7 years. Serves me right, Judy?
Well, it's worth it though, Bob, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Tell that to Bonnie, who's been trying to sleep through me coughing all night.
Well, and I just keep telling myself every challenge is a blessing.
Yeah, I'm going to tell that to Bonnie. She's going to talk at me.
I know she knows you're a blessing.
She does. She does. Well, really, that's, Judy, I'm kind of at the end of my list of stuff for today. How about you?
Well, the fourth thing in the process is just being able to do things on automatic. Just like, my 8-year-old granddaughter is going to be able to not only know the way to school, but she's going to be able to drive the car. And she's not going to not have to think about putting her foot on the brake and putting her foot on the gas and looking in the mirror. How many times, Bob, maybe it's not the same for you because there's only one way to your house, but for many of us, we go someplace or we go home from someplace and we are so automatic that we don't even know how we got to where we were going. And, and it's not because of too much that I had to drink that night, at least not normally.
Not normally, yeah. Not when you have your little granddaughter with you.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So being able to learn something so it is innate, so that we actually don't have to look at the 21-day challenge list quite every day because we know what's on it. We know what we need to do, and we're getting pretty good at doing it. Yes, we have our slumps. Yes, we're going to go backwards sometimes, but there's so much that does become automatic. Being able to pick up the phone and ask questions and being a master at asking questions can become automatic, so that like me, when I first became a coach, I had a list of questions. I didn't know what questions to ask. So I had a list of 100 questions, and as I was coaching people, oh my gosh, I hope none of my clients are ever hear this webinar, but sometimes I'd like, what kind of question can I ask her right now, or ask him? Let me look at the list, and I'd come up with a question.
Sure.
And now it's so automatic that I have such a curiosity that I have more than one question in my mind on what I can ask. And, it's become a natural ability, but it certainly was not natural when I started. Yeah, I was the person in the family that was told to not be in the room with the adults, not talk to the adults, not question them, but to sit quietly and look like a lady.
Yeah, Bonnie and I have talked about that. I think it's generational too. We were to be seen but not heard.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I think that the law process, to obey it and to get involved in it, there is a price to pay, but it's not a high price. It's a valuable price. To become a master teacher and a master learner both are, I don't know, there's a measure of comfort in that, or a measure of accomplishment, or whatever. Every time we finish a book, it's just like reading this Irrefutable Laws of Leadership book. I had no intention of reading this book. I didn't even know what it was until it was suggested that we read it, and now I'm really grateful that I've read it. I feel like I'm a lot better leader than I was when I started. And so, that's part of that process. You read a new book, you meet a new person, but you're constantly moving forward.
Exactly. And as a lifelong learner, it sure is a lot more fun.
It is.
So as we become that lifelong learner, we become learners, and we we're learning today so that we can become leaders tomorrow. And it is a process. It is a journey. And we need to remember that, each step in that journey is different. And some of it is good and some of it is painful. But we learn through the process and we grow through the process. And it's, like John Maxwell said, it's just one of the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership.
That's it.
And so if you haven't read this book, you can go to this website. You can just click on it and order the book. That is through Amazon. And Jean and my website, we make it easy to read some of these books because we both believe that we need to read those 10 pages a day or more, or sometimes less, to become lifelong learners. So,
if you go on Amazon, you can buy a used copy of the book too.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Inside cover of mine, there's a little sticker that says, "This book belongs to the Holy Name of Mary Parish Office Staff Library." So I wrote my name right up above it.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's awesome. It's awesome.
Well, that is our webinar for today. I want to thank everybody for coming. If there's any questions or comments before we say goodbye, we'd be happy to answer any of those.
Thank you, Judy and Bob, for sharing the information with us this morning.
Oh, you're sure welcome.
You're welcome, Dan. Thanks for having us.
And we have recorded it, so we will put it out in Monday's email.
That'll be great. Wonderful. Thank you, Dan. Thanks, Judy.
Thank you, Bob.
So same time.